I wanted to have Dr. Sharma come. He was previously out in the Panhandle working at the OPREC research station, working a lot in those production systems. He's also started looking at various practices as, cover crop, soil health practices, crop rotations to deal with all the challenges they have out in those western systems, mainly to keep the soil from blowing around. So I wanted him to come and touch base on some of the work he's doing, and then we'll wrap up for the day.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lofton. So yeah, all right. If you can't hear me, just let me know. I'll speak up more. So I was in Panhandle for more than 6 years, and I said that I have served my time. I want to come to Stillwater. So yeah, my primary focus is irrigation, and I have started looking into cover crops in the cropping systems of Western Oklahoma since last year. That was not a very good year to start with because we were under drought. And Dr. Haggett mentioned about cover crop inclusion in cropping system in semi-arid areas. The challenges we have is moisture. There is interest among the people over there, but there is also suspicion. And that's the challenge. How can we incorporate cover crops in those systems? And you have two systems. You can summer cover crops, you can have winter cover crops. And we have corn growing there, we have milo growing there, we have wheat growing there. All of them give good cover to the ground. But we also have cotton. And if somebody has seen cotton row crops, they are twigs, and then you have everything flat and exposed. You may not see these kind of soils over there. They are deep soils, but if that ground is blowing, you will see that. Before you will look into soil health, you will see that ground blowing, and that's why we need cover. How would I incorporate cover crops in those systems? So I looked into two systems, dryland and irrigated. Dryland, we have wheat, fallow, and sorghum. So you plant wheat in November, harvest in June next year, and then you leave it alone. And then you come back next year in June, you plant your milo, or you will continue as wheat, depending upon what your systems are. So we looked into this system, and we cut the wheat, and you plant cover crop into that after that in June, late June or July. Why? Because most of our rainfall comes in May, June, July, August, September. If you are not growing anything in there, your weeds are growing, and you want that moisture soaked in your system. But if your weeds are growing, you want to do herbicides. If you're doing herbicides, you're killing those weeds, you're soaking in moisture, but you're also spending money on it. How about we just go and plant some cover crop in it, something like sorghum Sudan or pearl millet, or what was the other two? Sun hemp and cowpea. We did that. We planted it. Last year we planted, nothing came up. This year we planted, it came up. We planted in last week of May. And sun hemp and cowpea did not do it because they came up, they were followed by 3 hailstorms, and they took care of it. Sorghum Sudan and pearl millet were the winners. And now I have a cover over there. I can either leave it like that, or I can graze it, or I could have done nothing and spray it with herbicides. My issue over there was what sort of herbicides if I'm going with cover crops. I will come back to this later. This is one of the challenges I'm coming across. So I have an added economic value with cover crops in my system now, and if I am lucky and I get some late rains, we will have some regrowth, and we can leave it there and have some cover in the ground. Wheat is good, but you still have to spray herbicide to keep those weeds out. And Paul DeLone in Vernon did some work and compared cover crops with the weeds which grow over there, and he found out they are not very different. But the issue with weeds is they're going to propagate. You will see them next year as well. So that's where the issue is. That's where the difference is between cover crop and your weeds. And next system is, I mentioned cotton, right? So cotton, I did this and I learned it. I waited until I harvested, and I harvested in November. We were going to harvest earlier, but we had 1 week when it blew 30 miles an hour or above. We didn't want to take our cotton stripper in the field because if it catches fire, it's going to blow. And then came snowfall. It did not melt for about a week, and the cotton bolls were wet. So we ended up harvesting somewhere around Thanksgiving, and I planted my cover in there in December. It was too cold, I could not give it water, it was dry. I was only able to give it water in February, and those cover crops came up in March. And in March, I was breaking my ground for my next crop because we go and plant our corn in April, late April or May. So that was one lesson learned. So what we did this year, but mind you, from planting of those cover crops in December until February, it didn't help anyway because my ground was bare and it was blowing. So you want something early on to have that cover in the ground. So what we did this year, we went and broadcasted our cover crops in cotton. When was it, August 30th or August 31st, right? I still have 2 irrigations left. I broadcasted it and had the sprinkler went over it. Hopefully they will come up and have some biomass on ground that will carry us through next spring when they will take off. And hopefully that soil will hold that biomass, that it will keep some cover on the ground for the next crop, because this I did in continuous cotton. One other challenge besides moisture is that when I was planting my cover crops there in the dryland system, we have weed issue. We have kochia and we have pigweed. And I can go and plant cowpea, and that kochia and pigweed actually took over cowpea. My cowpea plants were about this big and pigweeds were this big, and they just literally smothered them. Whatever was survived. So if the strategy that I can adopt is, if my fields have broadleaf weeds, next year if I'm going into it, I probably will pick grass cover crops, because I can go and I have more options for broadleaf herbicides. So if somebody is thinking about it and they are looking at their options, look at what sort of weed issues you may have. If you are going for grazing or going for forage purposes, and get some economic value of your covers. So that's the other challenge I have faced. So timing was one issue, moisture is one issue that I want to capture it and then manage it, and that's weeds. We started last year, we were in drought, we failed, and this year we have tried, and I'm confident about this year because we received timely rainfall and were able to get some data. And then cotton still has 2 to 3 irrigations left. The seeds broadcasted, I hope it will come up. But I didn't have weed issue in cotton because it's active crop growing and we managed it really well. So it's trade-off. If you are investing some money and you can get some money out of it by grazing or something, it's good, because at the end of the day everybody wants to feed their family, right? But there is one question that I would like USDA to answer, because if you have that cover and you are grazing it, how does it qualify as cover?
It doesn't.
Yes, thank you. So that it doesn't. So yeah, please be careful and be mindful of that. If your sole purpose is to keep that cover and stop your ground from blowing, you can graze it, but graze it in a timely manner that you still can have some regrowth. So that's all I had. Any questions I'll be able to answer, I'll be happy to. It's for whole western Oklahoma. I have seen that in southwest Oklahoma as well. I saw 2 cotton fields. One was tilled, and that cotton was about this high, and I could see the flower from the road. That cotton's gonna fail. And then I went to another field. It had wheat cover, and that cotton was taller. It was blooming too, but it had some balls on it that will make some yield. And the farmer told me that it's just wheat, and it was able to soak in that moisture because it had better health. And those soils are 4 feet deep, and if it's in the panhandle, I know that they can hold about 2 inches per foot. If you're 4 feet, you can hold about 6 to 8 inches very good if the whole profile is full.
December and or January? Out of curiosity, if that.
Oh, I probably will not plant anything in December or January. In my cotton, I planted in August. I will plant it in August.
Okay, so like after cotton comes off.
I can, well, you can go with triticale, rye. We can plant rye. Yeah, there is a little bit suspicion about rye, but you can do it if you terminate it before it gets into seed production. Yes, rye is a very good cover crop. It's just you terminate it before it gets to flowering.